Joining us now, of course, is our good friend and colleague, former Director of National Intelligence, former Ambassador to Germany, former spokesperson for the United Nations, and our friend Rick Grenell. Rick, welcome to the broadcast again, and we appreciate your expertise on this. We've been talking about Afghanistan. I'm going to get a comment from you about that, but I want to go to Russia first. You have a piece coming up on ACLJ, may already be posted right now, called Putin Knows. This is in light of the conversation yesterday between President Biden and President Putin. What's your takeaway? What are you seeing in this?
Look, I think it's really important that when we saw those pictures yesterday of President Putin sitting across the table from President Biden, we need to understand what Putin knows. What is he thinking when he looks across the table? And I try to lay it out in the piece. You know, one thing that's really important to understand is that Putin is sitting across the table looking at Joe Biden. He knows that Joe Biden spent the last 4 years telling the American people and the world that Donald Trump was a Russian asset. Putin knows that's not true. Putin knows that when President Biden says that Hunter Biden's laptop is Russian disinformation, don't look at the laptop and all of the information filled there about the Biden family relationship with China. Putin knows that's not Russian disinformation. So he's looking at Joe Biden and knowing that he has lied to the American people in order to get into office. I don't say that lightly. Those are the facts.
This is coming from Rick Grenell, who, if anybody would know about all of this, would be Rick Grenell. Like I said, I want to say this again because I want to thank our ACLJ donors. Without your support, we don't have Rick Grenell, Mike Pompeo. We've still have our relationship with John Ashcroft, the Attorney General during 9/11. I mean, that started almost 18 years ago. I mean, I can go on, but you get the idea. I mean, this is substance here that's real. Rick, let's take it a step further. We mentioned on the broadcast yesterday what you would have done in this situation, but I'm afraid if I look at what's happened in Afghanistan and the reports, you've seen them, of the loyalists to the United States, those that work with us, are being summarily executed or, quote, disappeared by the Taliban. We've got world condemnation on that. I don't know what that ends up translating into. But you look at that, you look at Russia with Ukraine right now, China with Taiwan, and maybe nothing happens till after the Olympics. But we're in a global. It's a global. Harry Hutchinson, our director of policy. Harry, what is it? Would you call it a global failure on every policy?
That the Biden administration has botched virtually every foreign policy initiative that it's been associated with.
Yeah. So, Rick, when you look at this, I mean, it doesn't. You don't have a lot of hope here. That's the problem.
Look, I think that the reality is that as Americans, we always have to have hope, and we have to look at the November election to know that we can adjust this policy. One of the great things about being a democracy is that we get to have a say every 2 years, and so we're in November. Things can change if people get involved. We can have a drastic different direction. But I think that you're exactly right. What's happening over the last 11 months is pure chaos. Chaos at the border, chaos at the pump, chaos at our grocery stores. Inflation is out of control. Yep. Point to one area where the Democrats and this administration have improved the situation from where Donald Trump left off. I don't think that you can point to a single one.
You know, we talked about briefly the Afghan crisis on the evacuation there. So now you have, if Russia were to launch a war with Ukraine, or an invasion, which is more like it would be like, we have a lot of Americans in Ukraine. So what happens on that evacuation, Rick?
Well, look, we already know that the Biden policy is to get 90% of the Americans out, and that's good enough. Leave 10% behind. So I would say to any American who is in Ukraine, be prepared. You better be part of the 90% because your U.S. government is going to leave 10% behind and be totally comfortable with leaving 10% behind. I hate that we're having to talk about this issue and look at choices that are bad and very bad, because over the last 11 months, we've been pushed into this corner. Things should have been much different. We shouldn't have given Putin the pipeline. Everybody knows that. But let's just remember that this was Angela Merkel's major request as she left. Today starts a new government in Germany. And now Joe Biden has to deal with the Green Party in Germany being in control of the foreign ministry and the defense ministry. That is a clearly weaker government in Germany that Biden has to deal with.
You know, Andy Economou, our colleague, just left our European Center for Law and Justice last week. in Strasbourg and kind of got a sense of what was going on there.
Yeah, I don't think the European allies are going to be as supportive of the president as he thinks they're going to be. In my opinion, he needs to think American and not think globally. But, Ambassador, I wanted to ask you a question. I'd asked you the other day to put yourself in Putin's head, if you could. And you kind of did in your article, Putin knows. But you put yourself in Putin's head and give us a reaction as to what he was thinking of Biden. And you answered that question. Obama retread Jake Sullivan said, quote, "I will look you in the eye and tell you, as President Biden looked Putin in the eye and told him today that things we did not do in 2014, we are prepared to do now." How do you evaluate that remark?
The reality is that in 2021, they didn't do it. They gave the Biden administration and Democrats in the Senate gave a pipeline to Putin. In that pipeline is not just energy, not just gas, it's leverage. And the reality is that we have to understand that Putin knows the weakness of the Europeans. And one thing I want to make clear, there's a different threat assessment that the Europeans have than what the Americans have. The Europeans do not feel threatened by Iran as much as we do. The Europeans do not feel threatened by Russia as much as we do. They should, because the rewriting of the European borders was real under Merkel and under Barack Obama and under Joe Biden as vice president. Now it could be happening again. So we need to understand that we have European allies that just don't view the world the same way. And so when Joe Biden decides to have consensus with them, makes us weaker, makes the United States much weaker.
We've got a lot of interest on our panel here. The people want to talk to you. Professor Hutchinson, Harry, what you had something for Rick?
Well, Rick, you made an interesting comment about the Europeans and our European allies and their unwillingness to depend upon the Biden administration perhaps going forward. How do you see that playing out in a number of areas, including the Nord Stream pipeline, the petroleum issue? How do you see that playing out in terms of Afghanistan, the Ukraine, etc.?
Well, one thing we have to make clear is that Germany is not the EU. Germany is a leader, and it's the largest economy in Europe, and it's important. But if we're going to have a transatlantic alliance that really works, the Biden team, the United States, always needs to understand that the EU is multifaceted. You can deal with the Eastern Europeans and get a lot more progress. Take the Nord Stream 2 issue that you point out. The Germans were really alone on that issue. The European Parliament, the European Commission, they were telling the Germans, don't do this. We need energy diversification in Europe. But the Germans ignored the rest of Europe, and Biden keeps playing to the Germans as if they're all of Europe. And we've got to be able to think differently about that. I see, it's a long answer to say, I see this playing out in the fact that Biden keeps wanting the Europeans to like him. He wants consensus. He wants claps and applause from the Europeans. And they just don't view the world the same way that we do, and they should. And so maybe NATO needs to have a meeting and shake people into thinking about the threat from Russia in a different way.
Rick, let me just, we only got a minute and a half left here. One last thing, and it's kind of changing focus, and that's China. The Olympics is going on, and there's a lot of tumult right now in this. Where do you see this playing out?
Look, it's very late. We've promised the athletes to go. I don't want to pull the rug from underneath them now. I do think we need to have not just a politician and diplomat boycott. That means nothing. Right. That embarrasses the Chinese if they were prone to embarrassment, which they're not. I think it's money. You got to get corporations to stop paying.
Yeah. No. And by the way, I agree. I think to pull it out from the athletes right now, I think would just be tragic for them. They've been working on this, and it's very late in the game to do that. Rick Grenell, Senior Advisor for Global Affairs and also, of course, National Security. Thank you for being with us and being part of our team. Thanks, Rick.